himself to you all and take you through the agenda of what we're going to cover today. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Leland. I'm Nathan Bamford, from 3M. I'm an application engineer, and my role mostly is around providing technical and end user guidance and advice to users around the selection, use, and maintenance of abrasive products. So I'll just go through the summary of the agenda that we're going to go through today. First, I'm going to touch on some of the 3M abrasive brands and technology that's used in the abrasive products. And then I'm going to go into a bit more product details, into looking at our depressed center grinding wheels, into our cutoff wheels, our fiber discs, our clean and strip discs, and then at the end, introducing a new product range, our 3M Cubitron 3. And then finally, we'll finish up with some Q&A. All right, so just touching on our 3M abrasive brands and technology. So there's a few 3M brands that have been around for many, many years, and 3M's been making abrasive products since 1905, so almost 120 years. Some of these you might recognize. We've got the wet or dry sandpaper, still commonly used product. Scotch-Brite in 1958 we invented, and a lot of people know that brand from even your kitchen, cleaning products and so forth. But there's a whole range of industrial 3M Scotch-Brite products that are used for abrasive processes. In 1981, we invented the first ceramic grains, and so there's now a lot of ceramic grains out on the market. But the technology that underpins most of our products today is from 2009, what we call Cubitron 2, or precision shaped grain. And so that's where I'll talk about that in a bit more detail, but it's where instead of having a crushed up rock mineral, we actually make tiny little triangular shaped grains. And with those sharp edges, they cut a lot faster. And then in 2023, we've got our new technology, which I'll touch on towards the end of this webinar. So how precision shaped grain works and what it is. So I talked about we've got little triangular shaped grains instead of like a crushed mineral. And with those sharper points on the edge of the grains, it actually acts like a cutting knife against the substrate rather than just rubbing against it and using friction to knock material off. So because it slices through the metal rather than rubbing against it, it means that it cuts a lot faster. It cuts a lot cooler because there's less friction and heat buildup. And the mineral actually lasts a lot longer too. So one of the benefits, I guess, is as it breaks down, rather than it rounding or dulling off, it actually fractures and creates a new sharp edge. So where an abrasive might actually start off cutting well, but then as it dulls off, it loses its cut rate. The precision shaped grain means that it stays sharp, and so you get that fast initial cut rate, but it also keeps a high cut rate right through the life of the abrasive, which is really important for consistency through to the end of life. So on the next slide, you'll see we've got the benefits here of the precision shaped grain. And how those benefits can actually translate into safety benefits, but also cost reduction benefits. So, the sharper grain means that we can use less pressure, and that can be a safety benefit for the operator because they've got lower fatigue. But then that can also mean a cost reduction in terms of they're wearing out their grinder less, so there's less replacement grinders and so forth that they need to pay for. Cutting cooler means there's less chance of burns or flames, but also less discoloration, particularly if you're using stainless steel and you get that bluing effect from the heat. Safer operation, so having less dust. We've actually had customers comment that they actually, after introducing our abrasives into their plant, they had a reduction in respirator usage simply because of the less dust in the air, and they were actually having to purchase less respirators. Cutting faster means less time on the tool and obviously a lower labour cost or increased throughput through the plant. Lasting longer, you've got less changeovers, less chance of incidents, and longer life per disc, meaning potentially less freight. And smoother running means you've got less vibration and lower risk of hand-arm vibration syndrome, but then also could be potentially reduced training or upskilling time as well. So I've just got a video here which will show a side-by-side of grinding with a depressed center grinding wheel against our precision shaped grain fiber disc. Perfect. So we've sort of covered off on precision shaped grain. So here's our first question of the day. So just type into the chat A, B, or C. So what are the three main benefits of precision shaped grain? We've got lasts longer, cuts faster, and cuts hotter. Option B, lasts longer, cuts slower, and cuts cooler. And option C, lasts longer, cuts faster, and cuts cooler. Just give that a few seconds, see if anyone's going to win the prizes. All right, so the correct answer is option C. So it lasts longer, it cuts faster, and it cuts cooler. Right, we'll move on to the next slide. All right, so in this section, we're going to talk about our 3M Silver depressed center grinding wheels. So the silver range of grinding wheels is sort of our mid-tier range. So we talked about precision shaped grain, and it's known as Cubitron 2 technology. That's a brand for that grain. So we have that as our premium offering. And so our Cubitron 2 products have 100% precision shaped grain. However, what we did was launch our silver abrasive wheels. And so they have actually a combination of the precision shaped grain and conventional grain in them, a traditional aluminium oxide. So by having that combination, it means that we have a really competitively priced product, which still has the performance benefits of precision shaped grain. So what we've focused on with this product particularly, it's designed about customers who want to reduce their overall abrasive spend and they don't want to, reduce their performance. So where it sort of sits in a range compared to traditional products, you can see there on the left, we've got aluminium oxide and aluminium zirconia products. And then we've got our silver and our Cubitron 2 on the right. So you can see there, in terms of durability and life, it's not quite as high as the Cubitron 2 for life with the silver range. However, it's in the same ballpark. It's very, very good on the life. The speed of cut is not as fast. But with the Cubitron 2, you see that's 5 stars. So if you're wanting the absolute fastest product at removing stock, then the Cubitron 2 is going to be the one, and that'll bring down your labor costs as well. So if you see down the bottom, we've got the abrasive spend per job. The silver, having that lower price point, as well as a really long life, will give you the lowest abrasive spend per job. But if you're looking at the total cost of job, including labor process in there as well, then the Cubitron is the option there. So we've got sort of 2 options to help reduce overall costs. Next slide. So when we talk about the performance, and you saw this, the star ratings and how they compare against other products. On the left here, we've got 2 graphs. So the left is our cut rate, and you can see over 15 minutes the amount of stock removed by these products. And you'll see there against some traditional aluminium oxide and aluminium zirconia products, the cut rate's much higher. And then on the right, we've got the wear. So this is how much stock is lost from the wheel. And so you can see the wear rate of the Cubitron and the silver products is much lower. Now, what we would normally have is by making a wheel, harder, we can get longer life, but it reduces the cut rate. And you can see that with like the red and the blue lines there. So the red has, a relatively good wear, but its cut rate's much lower. And then similarly, the blue has higher cut rate than the red, but it's got not very good wear rate. So usually it's a trade-off between the two. But with using the precision shaped grain, we're able to both improve the cut rate while also improving the wear as well. So that's the benefit of having that grain technology in our products. So we go on to the next slide. We'll talk about some of the applications that you use depressed center grinding wheels for. So these are the 2 primary applications. We've got beveling. So this is where we'll be really preparing a substrate for welding. So if we're going to join 2 plates together, for instance, we'll bevel or grind that edge back on an angle, and that'll give us a nice clean surface and a good area so we can get really good weld penetration. Then after we've completed the weld, the second application, we've got weld removal. So then that's basically just grinding back that weld until it's flat or flush with the plate. So going on to the next slide, you can see sort of some secondary applications as well for depressed center grinding wheel. So these are less common than the other 2, but ones, there could be flame cut removal, removing scale, gouging, where if you need to, place a groove into the part for welding or whatever using the edge of the grinding wheel. We actually have what we call a cut and grind wheel, which is reinforced in both directions. So it's more ideal for if you want to use them on that side. But then we've also got fillet weld removal as well. So those are some of the secondary applications you might use a depressed center grinding wheel for. So now I'm going to cover off and go into cutting wheels. So we've got our silver cutoff wheels, and I'll talk about sort of where, what a bit around wheel selection to start off with. So how to choose the right cutoff wheel, and a lot of it actually comes down to the thickness of the product that you're cutting, or the material that you're cutting through. So a lot of people and workplaces will use a 1 mil cutoff wheel in general, because 1 mil will cut very fast. But one of the problems is, because it is so thin, if you are cutting through thicker substrates, it can be a safety concern. And a lot of people might have experienced a wheel breaking. Some sites actually ban 1 mil cutoff wheels because people have used them on too thick a substrate and they've had a breakage happen. So as a general guide and recommendation around substrates, we've got We suggest a 1 mil can be used from anywhere to 1 to 4 mil substrate thickness. And then from 4 to 10 mil, we generally recommend a 1.6 mil thick cutoff wheel. And then above 10 millimeter thickness of substrate, ideally a 2 mil or higher thickness. The trade-off, I guess, is as well, though, with a thinner wheel, you're going to have better accuracy and speed, of course. With a thicker wheel, you're going to have a much longer life. You'll get more cuts out of the wheel. Yeah, there's a safety aspect as well. So, all right, so on to the next slide. Here we've got the comparison again with showing where our silver and Cubitron 2 products sit in the range compared to traditional. So aluminium oxide, zirconia. Again, you can see the speed of the silver is a little bit better than those using that precision shaped grain, but it's really the life of the wheels that we focus on with the silver range. And again, bringing that overall abrasive spend down with silver. But if you're really looking to cut faster and boost productivity, then the Cubitron 2 range is there for those who are trying to get the fastest option available. The next slide. So here's just showing you, I guess, how we compare in life, compare when we rate that 3-star against 2 or 1 star from the aluminium oxide and zirconia. And so you can see there, we've got some internal testing to end of life and how many inches it's actually cut in the substrate. So you can see the aluminium oxides, 43, 55, 94 for one of them. And we're looking at almost 2 times the wheel life in this testing amount of cuts they got out of a wheel. So. All right, so now another Q&A. Yeah, just see if you can get this. So looking back at what substrate thickness should a 1 millimeter cutoff wheel be used for? So we've got a 1 to 4 millimeter substrate, B 4 millimeter to 10 millimeter thick substrate, or C over 10 millimeter thickness of substrate. And I'll just give that 30 seconds to get some answers. All right, so the correct answer is A. So 1 mil cutoff wheel should really be used on thinner substrate like sheet metal from 1 to 4 millimeter substrate thickness. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go into fiber discs. So I'll start with a bit of the basics on around fiber discs. So some people might refer to them as sanding discs, but what we're talking about here are discs that are created with a stiff fiberboard backing, generally in the 36 to 120 grade range, and they're designed for heavy stock removal. So the difference between this and using a grinder wheel, for instance, is you've got, because it's a flat surface and you can get a much flatter angle to the substrate, you get a much higher contact patch. And with that high contact patch and having the mineral, particularly with the precision shaped grain, you can get a really, really high cut rate, much faster than a grinding wheel. You can use them in pretty much any sort of flat grinding application, so weld leveling, beveling, all of those that were mentioned before. The only time you won't really be able to use it is if you've got to use it on the edge. You can't, grind into a corner, grind on the edge like you can with a grinding wheel. To mount them on the grinder, you need to use a backup pad. So we do have some different backup pads, and generally if it's a heavy stock removal application, you want a harder, firmer backup pad. That'll allow you to put more pressure into the disc and have a better cut rate. So just looking at the different products that you can put on the end of the angle grinder here. So starting on the left, we've got the grinding wheel, which is sort of the traditional. So a lot of shops or guys will be using a grinding wheel, been using them for years. You know, they're generally, you'll get a really good life out of a grinding wheel. They last a long time. You know, they do a decent job. They'll take stock away to, you know, a decent cut rate. But they can leave a really coarse finish. So you saw in the video earlier, you know, the comparison with the divots, the burn marks, the gouges. They can be very unforgiving for new operators. So if you've got new operators who aren't quite skilled, they can leave gouges and so forth in the substrate. So the new operators might actually be better suited to a flat disc. You know, a flat disc is very easy to use and very forgiving. You're very not likely to leave any gouges in the substrate. They generally won't last as long as a grinding wheel, and they'll leave but they will leave a much finer finish. Having those flaps, it almost acts like a polishing motion, so it does leave a very fine finish. And a lot of people actually use them in combination. So they'll use a grinding wheel to do the heavy grinding part, and then they'll switch to a flat disc to sort of refine that before they go on to the next process, like welding or painting. But now with the precision shape grain technology in the fiber discs, they actually last a lot longer than they have in the past. And so because of that, and the high cut rate that we can get, using a fiber disc, you're going to get a faster cut rate than you would with a grinding wheel or a flat disc. And the finish is generally, while it's not as fine as a flat disc, it'll generally be fine enough to go into the next process of welding or painting, whatever that might be, without having to refine it further. And you've got a lowest overall process cost. So when you look at the labor aspect of it, then with the fiber disc having that high cut rate, it's going to be much, much lower than using the grinding wheel, for instance. So just to give a bit of a comparison in terms of the speed of the price, and I'll talk about which one's faster. Here's just a quick 60-second test of our different products. So we've got the Cubitron grinding wheel, silver grinding wheel, and then an aluminium oxide grinding wheel. Again, with the flat discs, the Cubitron, the B-tier silver, and then the aluminium oxide flat disc. And then we've got, again, with the fiber disc, our Cubitron 2, our 7 series, which is a blend like the silver. And then we've got the aluminium oxide fiber disc. So you can see there, even just by going to a precision shape grain product, you can get a much faster cut rate in the same product type. But where we really can save a lot of labor is where if we're currently using, for instance, an aluminium oxide depressed center grinding wheel, and we go up to a precision shape grain fiber disc, you're actually talking over 4 times the cut rate and removal, and so that's a significant labor saving that we can add to our processes. So one of the things that people say, oh yes, a fiber disc is fast, but it doesn't last as long as the grinding wheel. So I prefer to stick with a grinding wheel. But it doesn't last as long is, I guess, subjective. So here we've done some grinding. So this is using a Cubitron 2 grinding wheel. So it's got the precision shape grain technology, just like the fiber disc. And you can see there, of course, the fiber disc is faster at the start and it does wear off over time and lose its speed, whereas the grinding wheel sort of maintains its cut rate because it's constantly exposing new mineral as it wears down. But over the life of the grinding wheel and the life of the fiber disc, we actually found that the fiber disc was able to remove 35% more total stock than the grinding wheel. So not only is it faster, but in terms of the actual total amount of work done, it's actually got a longer life as well. So it's something to consider. So next slide. And so just to sort of visualize the difference in speed, we've got this little demo box you can see here. So on the left, we've got a depressed center grinding wheel, a standard aluminium oxide grinding wheel. On the right, we've got our latest fiber disc product, the 982CX Pro. And it's just a stainless steel tube Yeah, 1/2 inch diameter, and we've got 2 kilogram weight on the top just to simulate the amount of pressure that you would put, on a grinder pushing down. So we'll just play the video and you'll be able to see the difference side by side between them. So even in that quick little demonstration there, you can clearly see a significant difference in speed, but also the heat, the amount of sparks coming off the grinding wheel is much higher, and you'll see even the end of the stainless steel substrate is sort of blackened and discolored, compared to on the fiber disc. So you've got the discoloration, which might need potentially a rework. Yeah, you've got the faster speed. And then even though it's sort of difficult to tell, but as it was going down on the grinding wheel, the plates at the top were chattering a lot more to indicate sort of there was a lot more vibration and so forth that the operator would be feeling when we're, using these two products. So sort of a visual comparison anyway. Next slide. Okay, so now moving on to another application in cleaning. So we've got what we call our product Clean and Strip XT Pro. So this product's designed for cleaning, so any contaminant removal. So it can be removing rust, paint coatings, even some mill scale if it's not too heavy. And this product is designed basically to be a much safer and faster alternative to what would traditionally be done using a wire cup wheel, as you can sort of see at the top right there. So some of the safety aspects we've actually sort of compared here. We've got at the top right, so removing rust, the vibration is a 90% reduction compared to a wire cup wheel, or 69% compared to a flat disc, doing the same operation. So you can reduce your vibration a lot. Even against other non-woven discs, it had a 35% reduction. So those are all the things about comparison in the vibration reduction. There's less pressure and less time, but there's a lot of other benefits in terms of the speed as well. In some instances, removing the rust can be up to 10 times faster using one of these clean and strip products compared to a wire wheel. And having that on the end of the grinder, the clean and strip only weighs, say, about 180 grams, compared to a wire wheel, which, in the same size could be up to 1 kilo. So that's a lot of weight to have on the end of the grinder, all day. So we'll go on to the next slide. And one of the things that people ask, because we've actually got two clean and strip products, there's a purple and a green. So people will ask me, what's the difference between the two? So the main difference is actually the mineral or the grain that we put into each of them. So the purple has a silicon carbide grain, which is a much, I guess it's a sharper mineral, but it'll tend to fracture when it hits a harder substrate and not dig into the substrate as well. Whereas the grain has an aluminium oxide, which is the same that we've got in our grinding wheels and so forth. And so that will actually take away some material. So when you actually push down the Scotch-Brite onto the substrate, because it has that web pattern, it acts like a spring or suspension. And with that silicon carbide grain, you won't actually dig into the substrate or take away any of the stock. So you can remove all of the paint or rust on the top surface without changing the geometry of the part. So that's where the main benefit of the purple one is. When we bring in the green, that's when we might have some pitting or small divots, or some heavier rust. Then that green will actually help remove all of those contaminants, but also can take away just a little bit of that stock to give you a nicer, cleaner finish. So it really depends on how aggressive you want the product to be, but they'll both remove the paint and mill scale fairly similarly. All right, So now we're going to go back into another question. So which of the three abrasive products that I mentioned earlier in terms of grinding, which will have the lowest overall process cost? So when we factor in the abrasive cost, the labor involved, is it A, the press center grinding wheel, B, the flat disc, or C, the fiber disc? So again, I'll just give that about 30 seconds. Okay, so the answer is C. Generally, the fiber disc will have the lowest overall process cost. And as you saw, it's because it's generally much faster, and labor tends to be the biggest part of the process costs. So, next slide. All right, so now I'm just going to talk about our new technology that's coming very soon. So, we've got the Cubitron 2, which is known as the productivity game changer. It's generally a much faster way to do things, and we've just upped our game with Cubitron 3 abrasives, which will be coming soon. So, just to give a bit of a background on what the Cubitron 3 is. So you saw in the start we had the inventions over time by 3M or brands, and so we had the Cubitron grain on the left, which was the first ceramic grain that was a bit of a breakthrough at the time compared to conventional aluminium oxide and aluminium zirconia. And then we have the Cubitron 2, which is the precision track grain, and that's underpinning most of our current range of products. So what we're launching now, going forward, is actually what we're calling Cubitron 3. And so there's two parts to Cubitron 3. In our coated products like the fiber disc and belts, there'll be actually a new shaped grain. So the grain is actually rather than a equilateral triangle, it's shaped to give even sharper edge than the current triangle. So because of that, we're able to get much higher cut rates across all of our coated products. When we go into the bonded products, we've actually changed the molecular bonding technology of the grain. So it's still in that equilateral triangle for the bonded product, but how the molecular bonding occurs is different, and that gives us a much longer life than the existing product. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see what we're talking about in terms of the performance difference and life. So these numbers that we've got here are actually done from robotic testing internally against our current Cubitron 2, which is already a extremely high performing product. But in the grinding wheel, we've got a 15% improvement in speed, so it's actually able to cut faster. But then the life, we've actually got about a 50% improvement in life over our existing Cubitron 2. So those are pretty big numbers. But then we go into the cutoff wheel, and again, we've got a slight improvement in speed, about 11% improvement, but we're able to actually 3x the life of our cutoff wheel. So that's a massive upgrade in terms of life of our cutoff wheel. So these products will be coming soon, launched in the next couple of months. So stay on the lookout for these. But if you're looking for really long life products, then the Cubitron 3 bonded products are going to be ones to look out for. So I'm just going to go into a bit of a summary now, just cover off all the topics that we've mentioned. So some of the things you might remember. So remember our 3M precision shaped grain abrasives, having that mineral can really boost your productivity. Make sure you're using the right thickness cutoff wheel for the application you're doing based on the substrate. Remember fiber disc can reduce your overall performance cost because of the cut rate and the speed that they get. Clean and strip can improve your safety in terms of rust removal and paint removal applications. And coming soon, we've got some new Cubitron 3 abrasives to look out for. So I'll hand back over to Leland now, and he can mention some next steps.
Beautiful. Thank you for your time, Nathan. All right, so just to finish up today, I just wanted to, thank the guys at 3M for coming out today and helping us and giving this presentation. Nathan's done an absolutely brilliant job today. So thank you to everyone for attending the webinar today. I know it took some time out of your workday, but we do really, really appreciate that. We will be contacting the prize winners to get you guys your prizes on their way, which is something pretty fun. As mentioned at the beginning too, we're going to send you guys out a link to this. That way you can share it with your teams and rewatch it. And if you've got any questions, make sure you hit your local reps up to have a chat with them about it and ask anything you need a hand on or want to know a bit more information on. There is some options to get the guys from 3M out as well to answer some questions with the local reps. So make sure you chat to your reps when they come out on site next. On behalf of Motion Australia, I would like to thank Nathan and the 3M team massively for their help today and presenting the webinar and covering off the abrasive range. So with that, thank you from Motion Australia and 3M, and we'll let you get back to work now. Have a good day.